Okay, so now welcome to the economic revolution. Real cool. We've got a long list of things on this one, and we're starting with dismantling of colonial thought patterns, very important. And that moves into Kaiser School of Socioeconomic Strategy, and then we have economic revolution. Let's just take those three first, right? Dismantling colonial thought patterns, very necessary. Many times, many projects are based on colonial thought patterns, which means that's why progress never really happens. You just keep perpetuating the exact same situation with the exact same ratios and, distribution of wealth, and that continues forever and ever, and you wonder why Africa's not getting anywhere. So dismantling the colonial thought patterns is very important, not only in Africans but also in the Europeans, because people do not know how deeply they are conditioned. So in order to save lives and to save money and to save time, that is very important. Now that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and can actually get out of order, get out of hand. So it needs to be within a controlled environment, sometimes institutionalized environment. So that's why we're creating the Kayesa School of Socioeconomic Strategy. We know that we need to have socioeconomic strategy, and sometimes people don't even think in terms of socioeconomic strategy. So we need to educate people in terms of socioeconomic strategy. That's what I'm dealing with at the moment. So we're turning that into an education, turning it into a qualification that people can get. And we have the school at my home in Malawi at Kayesa Inn. We're turning my home into that type of institution, basically. Economic Revolution, that's a page for all the videos that basically have the intellectual and philosophical underpinning for what we're dealing with, or the arguments. So, why? Many times we're going to have to quote, many times we're going to have to argue against people who are basically supported by certain schools of thought. Like when we're going to talk to the EFF in South Africa, then you know that they're under the school of thought of Marxism, maybe, or maybe Frantz Fanon or whoever. And all these are legit and good, but the thing is that we need to be kind of like showing our intellectual underpinning, philosophical underpinning for our stance, basically, as Rastafari and as custodians of the reggae music and reggae legacy as such, or reggae future, basically. And that's what that page is for, deeper reasoning. Return of the Black Star Line, Marcus Garvey again. Marcus Garvey, this great success in cooperative economics, where they were able to sell stock and to create the Black Star Line, is very impressive. And having organized 6 million people across the world, membership of the UNIA, across the world like that, very impressive before internet and anything. So definitely something that we need to look into for us to move forward and to control our destiny. And then you have how we revolutionize the music industry. That is basically cutting down the costs in promotion, because we're using home-based promotion, kitchen to kitchen, which is why this whole thing is coming from the kitchen. This is the whole kitchen industry we're dealing with right now. And that domestic, adding that domestic value to everything that has to do with music, keeping the family together, and reinvesting in the family, reinvesting in the youth, so that the revenue from the music goes right back into the community that the talent came from. And that is mainly in support of mothers, single mothers, married mothers, and all of that. Mothers in relationships and everything. That's basically what that is. Cool One Records. How do we get the tree market music industry? The tree market. So we have a tree market economy as opposed to the free market economy. We also like to make some fun and say the flea market economy, and then also to run away from that, which is the flea market economy. But we say the tree market economy because it should be planted like a tree by the rivers of water. So the reggae dollar every reggae dollar represents the activity of planting a tree. So every time you hold a reggae dollar, you know that a tree somewhere has been planted. X amount of trees have been planted somewhere. You understand? So that's the whole thing, the tree market economy. Trying to make sure that economic growth goes in tandem with environmental growth, basically. Okay? And then redefining European activity in Africa is very important. Redefining European activity in Africa is is that you need to kind of like have, it's basically what the reggae dollar market is about in general. that you need to have the distribution of money and the dynamics. I use dynamics a lot. It's not dynamics I want to use. The circulation of money in communities. It needs to circulate several times so that it basically benefits the different stations in the community. And we find that the unilateral movement of money, or how money is administered towards Africa, or where it is administered from, um, is part of the problem. So by the time European activity comes to Africa, it needs to be a result of African activity in Europe on that same activity. So we need to prepare the Europeans through our activity what we can win in Europe, and therefore that'll be like the secondary move. We'll be having the Europeans coming to Africa to activate the other side of the other half of the circular movement. So basically, you will check it out on us. It's just very necessary because that way, in many ways, you can synthesize several posts on a budget, and may kill three flies with one blow, basically. Deal with investment in Europe, taking care of loans in Europe, and at the same time, that same money would come to help out Africa. So you save a lot of money by making it circulate in a certain way. You understand? How we expand the African tax base. African tax base expansion is to right to the very crevices and corners of the most marginalized land in a country like Malawi. We'll be able to derive tax because we are going to basically organize our people according to a financial market, a financial structure, which is basically 12 people to a bank account, and then activating those people to plant trees and using that as a basis to to build future businesses according to whatever inspiration people may have. But they started out planting trees together, so that's called 12 by 12. 12 people to one bank account to force people. Force is a bad word, but to actually, yeah, let's just say force people to work together because it's in their common interest to have one bank account, the poorest of the poor. So that's the 12 by 12 strategy that we have. The Sakudusa Planet Festival. This is a way that we're gonna use to give our people, our hustlers in Malawi, a chance to hustle abroad without leaving Malawi. Basically, exporting the hustle so that the hustle can go out and fish some foreign exchange and bring it home to Malawi. You know. So that's the Sakudusa Planet Festival. Very good idea. Message to Africa's billionaires is that, well, basically, as youths, we really want to be able to raise a lot of money ourselves, but we need the help of the billionaires, so if they can meet us halfway. So that means that if we are able to raise $5 billion, we expect the billionaires to raise another $5 billion, and that's the whole basis for the $10 billion plan, so we can proceed with that. So again, with the billionaires, you could say that again is that unilateral movement of cash that tends to marginalize and exclude a lot of the people. Literally, the money rides right past you when you're poor. You can see it, the high road carrying all the goods to the market, and you're just there walking, suffering. Message to Africa's billionaires: establishing African governance for Africa, very important. Because African governance for Africa basically means that the governance, the important decision makings are no longer centralized. I know a lot of politicians will want to hear this, but we're going to bang on with this because we are African, and we need to have our traditional lines of governance to have a stronger influence and authority in our lives, because that is what supports our psyche as Africans. And if we don't do that, then we basically are operating in a very psychologically compromised condition, which is why a lot of things that are happening in Africa, you can't understand how anybody in their right mind would allow it to happen. This happens because of the destabilization of ourself and of our understanding of self, because we're not allowed to govern ourselves according to how we actually are in our DNA for thousands of years, for millenniums. And it is the clash between Western governance and African governance. And within this is where you find the loopholes and everything that we start to call corruption and nepotism and whatever. So if we could kind of like just go and reestablish the African governance, or find a right, really thought out way of how to combine the two and synthesize the two, which would be one of the tasks that you would have at a place like the KSS School for Socio-Economic Strategy. You would research and find ways to actually engineer. It should be engineered, you know. It should not just be like how the British came and said that, okay, fine, we want to bring British rule, so therefore now we're going to relegate traditional rule to the village and blah, 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 and the rest of you are under British rule. No, we're saying, well, if it must meet halfway, then let it meet halfway. But I would rather that the Africa one dominates. And if the African dominates, how are several things guaranteed that people are already used to because of being exposed to European ways and stuff like that? That is something that we can work at the KSS School of Social Economic Strategy, you know, and that is the economic revolution.